family, Black and Latina relations, creating a community for us. As a way of starting, I'll ask everyone on the panel to introduce themselves with name, identity, race, and city and state. So that's a lot.
Hello, my name is TJ. I'm born and bred in Boston, Massachusetts.
Identity and race.
I am a woman who loves women. That's how I identify. Whatever you want to call that, that's fine. I don't particularly do labels.
Race ethnicity.
I am Black, African American, and a child of the African diaspora.
I'm Melanie Aguste. I come from Los Angeles, California. You're going to have to forgive me for a second because I had some Red Bull and I just need to take a moment to say that the fact that this conversation is happening is so special. I come from a place where our parties are loud, but our conversations are non-existent. So this is special. I know that we want it to be bigger. I know that we wish that more people were here, but embrace the fact that we're talking right now. Because where I'm from, it's not happening. So I'm going to continue. Sorry, take a second. I am a strong Black female lesbian, and I wear that all proudly.
So, buenas tardes a todos. I am Luz Lopez, and I am Boricua. From Puerto Rico, and I grew up there and came here as an adult. And I always start with that because it's different when you grow up in the island and come here. I came for graduate school. I'm very proud to be Latina, and I'm also very proud to love women and be a lesbian and be here in this conversation. So, thank you.
I'm Ayari Marie Aguayo, and I love women, and that's all you need to know. And I'm a Panamanian, full farm. And I'm just thrilled to be here to talk about the Latino and Black interactions and so on.
Hello again, I'm Thiadora Pina. I'm Cape Verdean. What else? Let me see, I'm from Boston. And my identity, again, I'm Thiadora Pina. I'm Cape Verdean.
Good afternoon. Alejandra Senkiang. I am from Boston as well, half Venezuelan, half French Canadian, and I'm gay.
Well, let's just get started with a question for Melanie, Dory, Delia. What are some of the issues which divide the Black, Latina, and other communities of color?
I think some of the issues, I think that sometimes the media plays a big role in how they like to divide people, and I've always said this to students when I speak to them. It's like, you have an identity that they want to put you in, and they try to separate the groups so that the groups can't be empowered to work together. Because if you separate people, they'll think that each other are after one another. I can honestly say in my personal experience, as a person growing up in this country when there weren't many Latinos here, and the ones that were here were Mexican Latinos who everybody thought just picked lettuce, and they just felt that they were so different. I said, well, there's nothing wrong with them taking those jobs because they're doing jobs no one else wants, so why are you complaining? And being what I look like, people would say, well, you don't have to say anything about that Spanish thing going on. And it's like, like, well, when I go home, I'm living in a Panamanian household, and that's a totally different world than leaving your house, and you're in America, and you're a black person in America. Because I wasn't raised as a black person in America, I was raised as a Panamanian in America, which took on a whole different spin. But people have a tendency to want to split you up and make you have to decide, which is something that's very dangerous. So they don't want us to work together. And our misconceptions come from families, they come from media, they come from everyone else that says, well, you know, this group does it this way, these people don't feed their kids, they only give them sandwiches for dinner, and, you know. And it's those kinds of things that, you know, they just stay in our brains, and as we grow up, we just internalize those things. You know, and then we push them on each other because this country has forced people, Latinos and blacks, okay, we have a certain part of money. Let's give it to you guys because we kind of like you. You're almost the new black. And let's not give it to you guys because you've been misbehaved for a while. It's that kind of division that creates problems with us. And then to compound the problems, we happen to be people that love people of the same gender. So we've got to figure out a way to work around it all. And not this, oh, well, you can't go out with somebody outside of your race because, you know, you're taking our women. Well, apparently you're not doing what you need to do for your women.
I echo that, and all of my comments come from my experience in my community, because I mean I haven't been everywhere and I haven't experienced everything, so I just want to clarify that. If you guys don't know, I'm a JD MBA at UCLA, and I don't know if you guys know, but in the UC system, affirmative action is actually illegal. So there's actually more Harvard law students of color here than there are at UC. And I'll just break down the numbers for you. So at the law school, there's about 1,000 students, and there's 30 African Americans, probably about 45 Latinos. In the business school, actually, there's about 740 students, and I came in with a class of 5 African Americans. There are only 7 Latinos. So it's rough, and so I think at least in the UC system, what I've experienced is it's resources. You're competing for resources. Your like home base, you people come from all over the country, is your Bolsa or your La Raza or whatever that group is, and they need money. And so what ends up happening is there is a competition there, and because there's such a need that we want our stuff specialized for us, right? Because we don't want to do both because we don't know how to do both, or maybe we're scared to do both, or people don't want to do both, or whatever reasons there are. So we're doing these things separately, which requires a lot of funding, and then you're looking over your shoulder, kind of like almost a sibling rivalry thing, like, well, is your piece of the cake bigger than my piece of the cake? If it's, why is your piece of the cake bigger? And it's kind of this tug of war, and I think there needs to be more, at least at the graduate level system and within schools, to find ways to bridge those gaps so that you're not competing over those resources, so you're eliminating at least one of the key barriers.
Yeah, it's great that it came after you because I'm going to agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that a lot of it is economics and socioeconomics, and when you're, you know, all scratching for that small piece of pie, there's going to be a lot of scratching going on, and I think it's really some of the issues between blacks and Latinos is similar to, or a microcosm of the issues that happen in society in general, between races. I mean, what's going on with, you know, Palestinians and Israelis. I mean, I don't think it's all that different just because our skin tones or our languages are different. I think we're just a microcosm of what goes on generally in society. Does media have something to do with it? Of course. Economics, I think, has a large part to do with it. If the pie's bigger, you know, you just don't have as much to argue about. But when you're, you know, you put a lot of, you know, rats in the cage, if you will, it's a small cage, there's going to be some bickering going on. So you got to expand that, and I think you're right. I think it starts in schools. I mean, I went to law school. There was, I don't know, 900 or something of us. There was, I don't know, 10. I think there was less Latinos than us of color, and I want to say there was maybe 20 of us in general. It just wasn't. You just didn't see that. I've been an attorney for 11 years. I can count in 11 years I have met one other black female attorney and 2 Latino attorneys in 11 years in Boston. Never met anyone Asian. And that's, you just expect that. But again, I think it is economics and I think it's access, and that has an awful lot to do with, I think, one of the issues of the divide that we do have.
TJ and Luz, are there commonalities of experience and aspiration that have to be strengthened between these communities?
Okay, I'll start. I think definitely. What we tend to do, like you said, we're all going after the resources and we start to focus on the divides or the things that divide us and why we're not the same. And we need to stop and actually acknowledge our histories are intertwined. You know, that complexion doesn't come from anywhere but the same continent that our complexion comes from. And once we, break down all of these, smoke screens and acknowledge that we are all, like I said, part of that African diaspora, and then moving forward, we need to come together, period. And that's on all levels. I mean, if you want to talk about equality, we need to acknowledge everything is not equal between, it really is us and them, and once we start from there, we can do anything, and we need to start now.
So I agree with you a lot, and Puerto Rico has the story of colonization, and I think one word that we all have in common is resiliency and creativity in working together to change that story of oppression and in different languages and in different shapes. In addition, I think we have the commonality of spirituality and family that is common. And this morning I was in a different workshop and they asked what was hard of coming out. And I was struck that every person, and there were a lot of us in that room, said the hardest part was to tell my family. The hardest part was my religious beliefs. The hardest part was my culture. So those three things are the same for all of us. So, and the homophobia in our communities is there. So we have to stick together and work together to change that and to be more visible and open and talk about it in that way.
This next question is for Melanie and for Luz. Do immigrants from Latin and Caribbean...
I think you skipped the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think you skipped the question. You skipped question 2. Are there significant societal?
Oh, I did. I'm going to come back.
Oh.
Thanks. Do immigrants from Latin and Caribbean countries come with a whole set of stereotype-based myths and experience that complicate relationships between the two groups? That's for Melanie and Luz.
Okay, do my best at this one. So this is something I've recently had experience with, because my internship right now has me researching kind of the markets in Latin America. I think one of the most prominent things that I was finding was, when you think about what filters through on an international level, it's really the biggest stories, right? The biggest headlines is really what gets through. And so when I sat down and I really thought about it, I thought about, okay, so for our community, in terms of our story, who's really out there? There's Ellen, and then there's rumors of other talk show hosts. Who's really telling, where's our story coming from? And really our story's coming from the athletes that play overseas or the athletes that you see in the Olympics. Really a lot's athletics and entertainment, and really how much is that reflective of the depth of our culture, and how much is that reflective of the depth of who we are. And I think that you're having people come over possibly with these preconceived notions and trying to connect with us on this level that really isn't our level. And so already, let's face it, we can tend to be defensive. So as soon as someone says something and you're kind of like, no, that's not me, and then you might brush them off. And so at that point of first contact, I think we need to do a better job of getting our voice out there and pushing up our leaders and getting somebody that if someone is in, Lima, Peru, and they want to know, okay, who is a lesbian of color in America with a story, they know, and it's out there. I think that should be our goal over the next decade, is that it's not just Ellen, it's someone else, and it's not just rumors of someone else, but there is a person, there's a face, and there's a story. The stories is really what changed things.
So, I was thinking of this question a few days ago when I got the email with the questions. And here, I think the stereotype that people may have is that there is no visibility in Latin America as much, and that is true. There's no visibility of gay and lesbian issues, but I think there's a lot of people working actively in our communities and in Latin America with this to make a change. And people come here thinking, oh, this is the land of equal opportunity and we're going to get a voice. And if you try really hard, I have heard that a lot, if we try really hard, you can make it. Forgetting the institutional barriers and the political barriers that make that happen, and the access that we were talking about this morning. So I think the stereotypes are both ways. People come with their own, but I think people here have also stereotypes about Latinos and the voice that we have. And we are a community, and we work together, and we work together with you.
Thank you. The next question is for Alejandra and Dory. Are there significant societal and political divides between Black and Latino communities?
So I think this was interesting when we're in the last panel talking about gender identity. Within many Latino communities, the male-female relationship is a core part of that society. And so that very much affects the identities of people who are queer as well. I think that the certain divides, there's a definitely immigrant, non-immigrant divide. So there's, everyone likes to put people in boxes. So you have, immigration is a Latino issue. Criminal justice is a Black issue. And I said this on my last panel, so I apologize for saying it again, but for example, in Massachusetts, we have the 3 strikes law, right? And people like to say, oh, but criminal justice is not a Latino issue. And, Latinos are 9% of the population and 28% of the prison population, so it is, it is a Latino issue, and I think that it's just, people like to be able to place people in boxes. I will also say, another thing that I was thinking about is when you look at the Afro-Latino identity, and it is very much an ignored identity within the Latino community. And so, when you see in the novelas and Univision, and everyone's blonde, not even brunette, there are some brunettes, but everyone, anyone who's, Afro-Latino plays the slave or the maid, always. And we have this in, quote unquote white culture as well, but the way that it's played out in Latino culture is huge. The Latino magazines, everything, and it's all light, everyone's light and everyone's very femme. So there's, having to deal with that, and if you're Afro-Latino, then, right, you're Black. Right? When you're in the society, you're Black, and in the Latino community, you're Black, right? And so so I think there's that tension there.
But don't forget the hypocrisy, though.
Yeah.
The tremendous hypocrisy that takes place in Latin America, and if you do the history, remember, the boat landed in different places.
Right.
That's the difference. However, when you think about what I look like, what my grandfather looked like, what my cousins look like, you could do a rainbow of people, and it's not because everybody was sleeping in their own bed.
I know that's me.
So there's tremendous hypocrisy that goes along with all of these things that things should be. But if you look at what people are, we have a saying, you have to know who your grandmother is in order to know who you are. And so this, being in a pot with crabs and one crab pulling the other one down as opposed to standing at the top of the pot and pulling everybody out, that's what we need to do. And we need to do that with our own community. The Latinos need to do that in their own community. Puerto Rico is the only place I've ever been that has an African museum. They tell the story of slavery. They say, hey, you know what, this wasn't a great thing. However, we wouldn't be who we are without the slaves because they brought so many wonderful things to us. And we're not thrilled about what took place, but we celebrate the fact and embrace the fact of who we are. And we're not ignoring it.
I see the question, political divides. I don't think there is a huge, although don't have my hand on all the politics, but political divide, I don't think there is a huge political divide. It's access, whether it's, criminal justice issues, as Alejandro was saying, or tone or color issues. I think access is what is a commonality that Blacks and Latinas have, Latinos, have. And so I don't think that divide there is huge. Societal, external institutional barriers, I think we probably face the same ones. I think it's the same ones we face. Being gay, I think, is how you present, how you look. So I think that we have that in common, certainly. Societal divide, yeah. I mean, we know those exist. And just because I think we have some of the similar culture, features or some of the similar colors among us, people think, oh, then you should get along, everything should be just fine. Well, it takes away from the fact that we have some similarities. I mean, I didn't eat sandwiches either growing up. It's kind of funny you said that. I was just talking, eat a sandwich. Like, I don't really eat sandwiches. I went to McDonald's, we didn't have hamburgers, we didn't have pizzas.
You ate cooked meals without
Yeah, I ate, Gigacita, I ate cachupa, I ate those things, and I was just like, I'd kill for pizza right now, I remember saying that. So I think we have a lot in common, but we also have a lot of differences, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm proud to be Cape Verdean, and I have very different traditions than you would have, or than you would have, when you two have very different traditions from each other. But until we learn to embrace those, let's keep them, because I'm proud of it. But I am also, proud of you. Yeah, exactly, and of you. So it's kind of that sort of happy medium. And how do we find that? Again, I think it's a bigger societal issue of how do we include everybody and realize it's a human race.
Yeah. And I think, Dora, you're pointing us in the next direction where I'll ask this question for the panel, and then I think that will lead us pretty nicely into soliciting some questions from the audience. History has shown women to play an integral role in many movements. Do you think it's our turn as LBTQ of color to initiate a movement to bridge the Black and Latina communities? What suggestions do you have to bring the two groups together? I'll open that to the panel, and then we'll open it to the audience.
Well, I have the microphone for a second. I guess I feel like I should go. Suggestion I have: education. You have got to expand your thought process. You've got to expand who you know. You've got to get out there and meet people. And it's how you're going. It goes back to, I guess, the panel we had before that, the panel we had before that, and probably the big reason why we're all here today is that you have to come to know each other. And you cannot judge based on the way that I look or you look or somebody. But the only way you're going to do that is education, is to expand your knowledge, expand your world. And then you'll see, oh, geez, you're not what I thought you were. Or, that's how I did it. I mean, we all have prejudices. We're in my family, we used to talk about, you talk about hair color, you talk about good hair, bad hair. I mean, you do that from time growing up. But then you've got to come to a point where you say to yourself, okay, what else is out there? And I'm going to meet people, and geez, you're not what I thought. Geez, and when you keep doing that, after a while, you're like, I just better stop thinking what I don't know what anyone's like until I get to know them. So it's education, and I think that that's huge.
I think also something that's, real important is the place of honesty and having real conversations about our different privilege, our different prejudice, our different, how your family talked about those people growing up, and not trying to hide from that, and not trying to run away and say, yeah, we're all, we'll come together and we'll be the bridge. I think that's unrealistic, but I think there are very few spaces where you can have that conversation. It's very, very hard, and it's hard because there are things that come up that you don't even realize from yourself, and that people will say that are really uncomfortable. So, this is, I think, a great start, actually, and a great place for people to make connections and start having those conversations. The same way you bridge divide, between white progressives and Blacks, and white progressives and Latinos, and, gay people and allies. I mean, there's, we can all come together around a quote-unquote coalition, but until we really tap into, what our fears and what our own hatreds are, then we're just kind of it'll just be the same.
I'm gonna speak like a true graduate student. I think we need to be more curious. I think we need to step back and think about what is it that we don't know about, what haven't we experienced, and start asking questions. It's amazing what happens when you start asking questions. For example, who was in DC last week with the emerging leaders? I think there may have been a couple of you. If any of you remember me, I was the one with the only white girl in the room. She's straight, and that all started because she started asking me questions, and so I invited her. She came along, she took notes, took it back to her school. I went to a very, very white undergrad. Within 2 days, I had an email from 5 people of color, and a couple of them were actually LGBT, and it was just a matter of them, now they want to know, and they want to know about my experience. And I did that through just being open and being curious about somebody who you presume has no connection to my experience. But I think we just need to open up and be willing to ask questions and answer questions and just start talking and learning, because until you really know what's going on, you really can't understand what's the most effective, meaningful way to make a change.
I think my suggestion would to be, one, just look past the differences. I mean, everyone is different culturally. You know, we have different cultures, but that's also to be celebrated, and that shouldn't be a reason for us not to be able to come together. You know, our concerns, our passions, our needs may be slightly, you know, different from each other, but at the end of the day, we'll get more accomplished doing it together and supporting each other's needs, and each other's, I can't think of the word, but like, you know, just support each other's missions, and we can get way more accomplished as opposed to trying to divide everything up and, oh, I'm only going to put my work into this because this is what's most important to me, and not realizing that in doing that, you're actually weakening our force, because it's the whole divide and conquer reasoning, and we need to move past it.
In Spanish, we have a slang that says, "Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres." Tell me with who you are, and I'll tell you who you. Well, it doesn't work too well. But I think creating community is important, and we have to talk about who we are more and be with each other more and talk about social justice. This is a social justice issue. Creating those bridges and creating more visibility and working to talk and be open about it. I was talking to a colleague, and I was the other day in an event, and this one was happening next. But I was thinking that it's easier for me to say I was coming here in a university setting where I assume people are open than telling my community, my Latino community, that I was going to speak in a lesbian panel, because they have a lot of assumptions, right? So I think doing that actively and being visible and talking about it and talking about the stigma and taboos which that carry with that, and going against fear, the fear that comes with that, and what we're going to lose. We're going to gain more if we keep talking about it.
All right, we'll open it up to the audience for questions in response to anything you've heard today. Let's start in the back. Yep.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say that, I feel like there are more similarities between the Black and the Latino community than there are differences, and that all of them are just variations of the original, and that's coming from Africa, or whatever it may be, and who colonized us or whatever it may be. That's the only thing that makes us different or separate. I think it's very realistic to come together and work together because of those similarities. I think it should make it a lot easier. It doesn't matter what language we speak. So long as we can speak a language that is common between all of us, and that's English, and we all can share English, that's all that it's going to take for us to come together and do what needs to be done in our communities. And to stop finding ways to separate us and continue to keep us separated, because at the end of the day, we have so much to offer people of color in general, and we are all suffering from the same things, the same discrimination, the same, many different things, the whole gamut of oppression. So I just really feel like there's no excuse for any of us in this room to not be able to work together and bring these communities together and do what we need to do to provide the services in our communities and uplift our people and be that person at the top pulling our people out the barrels, or whatever it may be. So that's just, how I feel about it, and, I just think we should do a better job, and there's no reason why we can't.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is LaTeisha. My question is, to what extent does language divide the Latina and the Black community, especially for first generation or for people who are not necessarily fluent in English? How does that separate us? And to what extent, what is there to do regarding that? Because as much as it's nice to have English as a common language, that's not always something that's accessible to everyone, and that's not always something that should be forced upon people to learn in the first place.
Watching English, we are coming. As an Afro-Panamanian, I grew up speaking English and Spanish, and oftentimes when my father would speak to me in Spanish, I would answer in English. And that happened so much with I grew up with a lot of course, Panamanians, Dominicans, and Puerto Ricans, and we did that with each other. I grew up watching Menudo, but then I had Black American relatives who wanted to know why I ate rice and beans every day. And I think it's very important, oftentimes I meet Black Americans, and I'm speaking as a person whose mother was Black American, who had Archie Bunker moments. And I really feel like we can't afford that. Part of the issue is this whole thing called Americanism says that everybody should learn English, everybody should eat hot dogs, everybody and Latinos play baseball. And what I understand Americans as a whole, but particularly African Americans, need to get out of that box. And that requires us, yes, we should learn Spanish. But I think that we really need to understand each other by learning about each other and appreciating each other and dispelling the Americanism, that Archie Bunkerism that seeks to marginalize all people of color.
I want also to say that we cannot lose the Spanish language because it's our history. If we lose, it's our history, our roots, our ancestry, our poetry. There is no way to translate some poetry and music and songs that we have. No way. So, but at the same time, we're going to build community with the others. And I think also that the lack of access for people that don't speak English is also that we have something to think about, because it's also about economics, about class. They don't have access because they don't have access to the resources.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Just to add to the Archie Bunkerism, if we really take a look at it, our most detrimental behaviors and attributes, we learn them. That's not what we are. Our ancestors were not that way. We have been so assimilated into this world, this country, that we have lost sight of that. Secondly, which I think it slipped my mind, in terms of the language, as an African American, my language was taken from me. And it infuriates me that there are people in my community who demand that you relinquish your language and you restrict ourselves as African Americans to we gotta do better.
This goes a little bit further than just language. What Americans do, or most Western civilizations did when they went into other countries and just colonized, was force people to relinquish more than just their language, but their ethnicity and their heritage.
Yes.
So when people actually coming into the U.S., basically for freedom to be who you are and hold on to your ethnicity and your heritage, we need to learn how to, again, embrace those things. So we reach out to other communities and learn about their ethnicity, learn about their heritage, not just their language, but their customs, and why they do things that they do. Why we eat rice and beans and why my family fries chicken. Do what we gotta do and stop trying. I agree with you wholeheartedly, TJ, we really need to stop trying to make people give up.
Exactly.
What keeps them, what makes a community an individual community, if you understand what I mean by that? Because that actually hurts me, this same goal. They took it from me, I don't know it. Being in class and asked to do that project, how did your family come into the U.S.? And I can look at my teacher and say, excuse me, Miss White Lady, however much I did not come here because there was some gold. I was tricked. I don't know what the promise was or how they did it or what that net was. And I know when I got here, we didn't necessarily want to be here. We stayed. My family migrated from the south to the north. They explained to people that I'm not West Indian still to this day.
Right.
I am African American from the south, and it burns me to my gut having that mistake. I'm not West Indian. I am African American. My family was born here. I don't know anything outside of the U.S. And anything outside of the U.S. that I do know, and parts of my history from the U.S. that I had to learn on my own. I had to pick up a book and do it myself. I asked somebody questions. And all that other shit. Explaining. Thank you all for sitting down.
Can I just, another thing too, I was thinking about the divide and we look at this whole topic of immigration and undocumented immigrants and, particularly in this economic state that we're in, and we see that, and when we're in the state that we're in, it's the immigrants, it's the reasons why we're here, and that very much can be a divide between the communities because you're looking at, it's a divide between low-income whites and Latinos or undocumented workers, and it's also a divide between blacks and Latinos as well. And, that in of itself is an issue because it's seen, undocumented immigrants are always seen as Latino, and that's not necessarily true either. But that is definitely a huge divide, particularly in the state that we're in.
All right, please join me in thanking our